All right, welcome back to Illiterate Book Club. I'm John,
I'm Matt.
and this is my review of Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Okay, yeah, so I'm interested in this one because I hadn't heard much about it. It's like a compilation of different stories?
Okay,
or
so yeah,
how does
so
this
if
work?
you remember the books, so
Okay.
this was a series of books that came out 80s, 90s,
Okay.
called Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. They usually had really ghostly
Kinda like
looking
Goosebumps?
artwork on it. So darker than Goosebumps. So these are short stories. Like Goosebumps were actually like small novels,
Okay,
right?
yeah.
Where one story took up an entire book. This was like a compilation of like stories you would tell at campfires
Okay.
and like little scary stories that get passed down from family member to family member kind of thing, right?
Okay.
So that's what's interesting. This is a compilation series, and they've turned it into a feature-length film.
All right. And so, wait, was it already on TV then? Or
No, I mean, I don't know if they've done any. I don't think there's been any other adaptations.
okay, it was a
of
compilation.
this. So this was just like
gotcha.
book. These were book
Yeah.
stories.
I got it. So, what is the rating on this one?
So this is a PG-13 movie.
Okay.
So this is and it's kind of interesting because, man, you are super unprofessional with your phone right now. There's a silence feature.
I thought I turned it down, but I guess I'm a liar.
Some people.
Yes.
Anyway,
Go
so.
ahead.
So, like the original
edit that
books,
out.
the books are targeted towards a younger audience, but they are really scary for what they are. To me as a kid, I thought they were scarier than Goosebumps stories, and
Okay.
so this is a similar kind of thing. The movie, based on this books, it's PG-13, so you could take younger audience members to it, but it is pretty frightening. It is. There's not a lot of gore. There isn't really any
just
gore.
the content in general.
The content, it's really super, intense with some of the things that are happening. And so it's not one for really little kids. Like
Okay.
the Goosebumps, even the movie, right? The Goosebumps
Right,
movie had the story that interwove all of these
Right.
stories and characters from the R.L. Stein novels
Yeah.
together. And even though
But I
it's
thought that was
spooky-
supposed to be more like a comedy almost.
yeah, it is a bit comedic because
Yeah.
even the Goosebumps novels have a bit of a comedic
Right.
edge to them. But Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is straight thrill, straight
Okay.
suspense and on the verge of horror. It's not like R-rated horror, obviously.
Yeah, but like kind of like a
horror
ghost,
for
like,
kids, right?
story-
Yeah,
horror
they're
stuff.
ghost stories, they're little monster stories. They're
Okay. So how do they do it as far as how do they segment them out? How are they each 15 minutes?
so
20
okay, so
minutes?
it's not a compilation. It actually is a straight
full
narrative,
width.
and kind of like the Goosebumps stories, where you have basically a narrative that works in the stories together.
Okay.
So this one, instead, much like Goosebumps, follows a group of kids, but this time set in the 60s, the late 60s.
Okay.
And there's a haunted house in the town, and they go there, and there's a story of a girl who was locked away and would tell stories to people who came up to the wall that they could hear from, but then kids started disappearing. And so they find a book, and with this book starts coming out new stories, but these stories feature their friends and the people that were at the house. And
Okay.
so these monsters, and some of them, the famous stories from Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, these things are happening to the characters themselves.
So it kind of plays like a little bit like a cabin in the woods scenario.
A little bit where they're in something, they kind of mess around with stuff and they wake something up,
Right.
And so it's a vehicle to bring in these scary stories, but it's a really well done vehicle because the narrative itself is not one of the scary stories, but it's a good way of bringing in those short stories, the characters, and what's happening.
Okay. So when they start reading, I'm guessing narratively from the book, is it like a flash and then it shows you?
Well,
what's
so
going
no,
on?
so like
Or how's that
I'll
work?
give you in the earliest part, the first character to experience something from the book, it's suddenly one of the characters is looking at the book and a story starts being written, presumably in blood.
Okay.
And as she's reading it, she realizes it's someone who was at the house with them.
Okay.
And then it's showing while she's looking at this thing being written, flashes over to him,
Okay. What's happening?
what's happening to him, and it's one of the scary stories, and he ends up disappearing.
Okay. Cool. All right.
So it's a really good way of doing it. Of course, it's not directed, but has a writing credit and production credit from Guillermo del Toro.
Oh, okay.
And so, he's one of the masters of horror.
So this is a lot of probably, I'm guessing, what's not CGI, but practical effects.
Yeah, there is a lot of practical effects. That's one of the things that makes it really unsettling.
Okay.
Is because it's a lot of great costuming and a lot of great, like, the mix of practical with CG is really effective
Okay.
for this movie.
Is there any recognizable people that are in it, or?
There's a couple in there that, you know, I'm not really good with names. I didn't look them up beforehand, but you have a couple actors in the young cast that you'll recognize. The older actors, you'll definitely recognize one of the fathers, one of the characters' fathers you'll recognize, and there's a sheriff for the town you'll recognize, but they're not like, it's not the
David
Brad
Harbour.
Pitt A-list sort of, you know, names. It's people you'll like.
They're character actors.
They're character actors that you see everywhere, and they're great actors.
Right.
And
so everybody pulls their weight.
Everybody pulls their weight.
People
There's
you don't know.
Yeah, there's not a lot of attention drawn to one person or the other. I mean, obviously there is a central character through the movie.
Yeah.
That is Stella, this girl that wants to be a writer and finds this book and all that kind of stuff.
Her name's Stella, so she has to be a stripper. Is that part
Well,
of the
you
story?
know, that's the real
crux of
tension
it.
there, right?
You
But
are
either way-
destined, Stella.
But either way,
To get
it
your
is
groove back.
it is really, I mean, it has really classic tropes and really great execution of horror movie cinematography. Like,
Okay.
you have these really great, I mean, you have the jump scares, but they're not super often that you have a jump scare. A lot of it is really
Just-
tension building.
Wow.
Right? Like a lot of sound effects and music play that gets the mood and gets you really tense moments.
Right.
And so it's a really well crafted scary movie.
So let me ask you one more thing, and then I guess you can talk more. You can kind of give your rating. And I know you're kind of a scary movie guy. And I'm not saying this like but is this something that like you will go back? Is this kind of a movie? Like, there's two types of scary movies in my opinion. There's a type of scary movie that you're like in the theater, and you're kind of like scared while you're there a little bit, but
Right.
then when you leave, you're not thinking about it. It's not creeping you out. There's not, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Does this have like the carryover factor that like, oh, I'm at home and I
Right.
might just, you know, not necessarily,
I mean,
you're not a kid anymore,
yeah.
but you know what I'm saying?
It
Like,
is you know, it's part of your sensitivity, right? I'm
Right,
not one, like, this wasn't one of those for me where I left being super spooked, but it does have that carryover factor. I think some people would. I think, you know, especially some of the creatures that just sort of appear.
Right.
You know, they're genuinely frightening. The makeup and the special effects done in this movie is really well done, and so it does give I mean, it will freak you out if
Okay.
you're kind of sensitive to that. So it's not one to go into it thinking it's going to be, you know, a breeze or just like nothing, or because it's PG-13 that it's not going to be a horror movie. It is really a horror movie, but it is a horror movie geared towards more of a teenage audience,
Right.
like the books.
Yeah.
But don't be mistaken. I mean,
Was it Paranormal Activity in them? They were PG-13, I think.
yeah. I mean, there is a great strain
There's a
of
lot of scary movies.
of horror movies that are PG-13. So
Right.
just because there's not blood and guts, there's no sex, there's not a lot of you know, swearing
I'm not
or
going to
violence
see it,
and
then.
all that kind of stuff, but
Okay.
it does have really great moments like that,
Okay.
like the short stories in the original books. I
Awesome.
think.
So where are you scoring it? You sound like you're loving it.
I'm pretty high on it. I'm gonna go with an 8, leaning towards a 9, maybe an 8.5.
Wow.
I
Okay.
would go see this because, again, I'm a horror movie fan, and so I appreciate especially the cinematography in this movie. I think it was really well done, and so those little parts that really, you know, bring the tension together for what's happening to the characters.
Yeah, it
It's
sounds like
good to rewatch, and it's going to be one of those, if you're a horror movie fan or if you are sort of fostering up a young horror movie
Right.
fan, this is a good one to have in your repertoire of movies you watch.
Okay, cool. So if you're a horror fan, you're gonna like it. And if you like it and you like us on the page.
Yeah,
There you go.
subscribe,
Hit the little bell button,
right?
and then we'll haunt you because
That's
every
right.
time
And
we post a video.
in the comments below, let us know if you've seen this, what you think, or
Right.
if you're a fan of scary stories.
Yeah, did you read the books when you were younger and all that kind of stuff?
All right.
Anyways.
We'll see you next time.